Hello students, and welcome back to the lore of the Iron Kingdoms with me, Professor Caster. And for all of us new students out there, this is a lore channel about the tabletop war game of Warmachine and the RPG, the Iron Kingdoms, respectively. Originally created by Privateerpress and now taken over by Steamforge Games. But before we begin, we're going to be taking care of the last three Character Warjacks of the Protectorate of Menoth. And then the following week, we will start up our Colossals of the Protectorate of Menoth and finish them out so we can get onto all the fun Zealots that they have in their army of their rank and file. But before we begin, thank you guys so much for checking into class today. And if you're enjoying these, please like, subscribe, comment, let me know how you're enjoying these. Let me know if you have any suggestions. And please let me know if there's anything that you would like to go over in the near future, because we can always add that to our docket. And thank you again, Steamforge Games, for letting me continue to read this fantastic lore. And without further ado, let's begin. Fire of Salvation. Those who have joined Grand Exemplar Michael Kreoss in battle have fought alongside this peerless machine, described its dedication and loyalty as if speaking of another soldier of the faith, rather than a creation of iron and steel. Indeed, the eyes of the Ariat Crusader carry the weight of presence more akin to the Zealots than to the soulless construct. Its fervent wrath strikes terror in unbelievers and kindless rapture in the followers of the true law, as they witness the fiery mace absolver incinerate entire ranks of heathens. Driven to vengeance by the dying of the faithful around it, Fire of Salvation swings its flame-wreathed weapons until every foe lies shattered and burned. Menites of other nations who have witnessed the righteous fury have been known to fall to their knees, lay down their weapons, and forsake old loyalties. Groveling before the Grand Exemplar, they beg him to restrain this relentless warjack from executing its just punishments. The choir of priests attending the Fire of Salvation know every detail of its chassis. Each rod, piston, and steel stands as part of a proud legacy, and the warjack's densely inscribed surfaces reveal the long and storied history of its participation in the wars of the Protectorate. After every battle, armorers etch new lines in the layers of plated steel to describe its mighty deeds. Kreoss and Fire of Salvation fought in some of the most dangerous actions in the early days of the Siege of Sol, often alongside just a handful of exemplars. Few knights survived these desperate rearguard actions, and Kreoss himself would surely have died if it not had been for his favorite warjack. Time and again, Fire of Salvation stood between the retreating Menites and the crushing Cygnar trenchers and Storm Knights. Its whole already a memoir of Caspia's soul conflict, Fire of Salvation armor was further ornamented in the days after Hierarch Voil's death. Its armor plates tell of countless battles through which it has persevered alongside Kreoss as the Protectorate pushed back the invading Cygnarns and laid siege to Caspia. The vaunted Crusader and its master fought their way through the press of heretics again and again, inspiring the other exemplars to follow. Though its cortex and weaponry are more a recent design, several of the Jack's armored plates once protected machines that fought in the original Protectorate Crusades, those bloody battles that fought conversions or death to the savage Idrians who foolishly opposed Menoth's will. Many of those warjacks were left in the southern sands after their destruction in battles north of Iktir, including the desperate last stand where Hierarch Luctine fell in 521 AR. Lying for decades in blessed proximity to Luctine, these artifacts were imbued with the sanctity whose strength is almost palpable. The priest of Sol considered it only proper that such relics should gird a warjack that fought faithfully alongside Grand Exemplar Kreoss since his earliest days of service to the Protectorate. During the ceremony where Kreoss was promoted to Grand Exemplar in 605 AR, priest affixed these plates along with blessed parchment illuminated with passages of the canon of the true law onto its chassis. These formalized and recognized the sanctity of Fire of Salvation has earned by righteous conflict while fighting alongside its master. Fire of Salvation has learned much from the fighting alongside Kreoss for 2 decades, and it echoes his footsteps in battle. Its presence inspires his Knights Exemplar who welcome it to their engagements. It fights as fiercely as a brother knight, seeming to become enraged at the sight of allies laid low and moving to intercept enemies and deliver blazing retribution. The Fire of Salvation, a very old Warjack with very, very much older armor. I can see why this guy is terrifying, because you don't usually see too many jacks outside of Kodor that are older than 20 years. And I imagine with every script that has been written on this guy, that really does kind of show its age and how dangerous it is, and probably how much more experienced its Cortex is probably at fighting, making it the perfect melee combatant to fight alongside Kreoss in battle. So, but let's see how dangerous this guy actually is with our Mark III to Mark IV changes. See what he gets from Kreoss, see what he just does on his own, and see how this old Jack still finds out how to do new tricks. And as always, let's start with his stat line. He is a large Warjack, so he has all these standard abilities of Slam, Trample, and Headbutt. He has a Speed 5, a Mat of 8, a Defense 10, and an Armor of 19. So nothing changed there. Pretty basic heavy Warjack. And it looks like in his abilities, his bond actually is the exact same as it was, making him super dangerous. So while bonded to Kreoss, he's not considered bonded under opponent's control and all that stuff with the bond. But what Kreoss gives him is Divine Inspiration. A model with Divine Inspiration gains an additional die to melee attack and damage rolls. You discard the lowest roll each time. So that pretty much makes sure that he's going to be pretty much hitting everything with his Mat 8. And yeah, that certainly shows his age, because it makes him even more accurate. Hits even a little bit harder because of, that's how dice work. So yeah, removing the lowest die out of 3 die is always going to be better than just rolling the 2. His other abilities he has normally are Relentless Charge. So while advancing as part of a charge, this model gains Pathfinder. Always makes movement for these large jacks even easier. And the last one he still has Righteous Vengeance. So if one or more friendly faction warrior models were destroyed or removed from play by an enemy attack while within 5 inches of this model during your last round, during its maintenance phase, this model can advance up to 3 and make an attack. So he can attack out of his activation, which for any Warjack being able to attack out of activation is phenomenal. And especially when we get down to his weapons, you'll see how much more dangerous that will become. But remember, with the Righteous Vengeance, it is by enemy attack. So if it was an attack, or if the attack states that if it's not part of an attack with the wording, that means that those don't count, such as somebody dying from fire continuous effect. So that is one of those things that would not do up. Although fire continuous effect, killing a Protectorate of Menoth probably is unlikely, but that happens sometimes, I guess. But yeah, let's say corrosion. Yeah, corrosion sounds more like something that would kill a Protectorate. So, but let's go over his weapons. So we have his standard open fist. We're going to start with that because that's the easiest. It is a Mat 8, range 1, POW 15, so he's punching pretty dang hard. And then his fantastic melee weapon is Absolver. This is a Mat 8, range 1, POW 18, and it causes continuous fire damage. So when he gets to attack out of turn, if somebody kills somebody around him, they're getting hit with a Mat 8, 18, and with his ability that gives Divine Inspiration, he is adding an additional die, kicking out the lowest die to make sure whatever he's trying to hit is going to be hit. So yeah, that is a terrifying thing. But there's more. He has Dispel on this weapon as well. So not only does he catch you on fire, but he also removes any upkeep spells and animize on that model/unit hit. So, as of course, Dispel, when this weapon hits a model/unit, upkeep spells and animi on that model immediately expire. So if they had an armor buff, a defense buff, whatever buff that they were getting, he removes it, and he probably just annihilated whoever he just hit with that POW 18, and that's before his even activation begins. So yeah, he is a very, very dangerous Jack who has one specific task, and that's to get in there, weather some damage, and then throw out as much damage onto the enemy as possible. And if they're killing his own men, it just makes him matter. So yeah, I should see Kreoss running with this guy anytime that Kreoss has played, because this guy is a melee beast. But let's move on. Hand of Judgement. Hand of Judgement exists for the single purpose to execute the will of Feora, priestess and protector of the flame. Armed with an immolator cannon and a massive mace, this mighty warjack brings Menoth's cleansing fire to those arrayed against the Protectorate. Through her station and her influence with Kreoss Old Warjack, overseer of the Soul Midnight Artificers, Feora commissioned Hand of Judgement as a testament to her political and martial authority. Feora's detractors in the Synod argued against this request, viewing the demand for such an elaborate weapon as a sure sign of arrogance and glory-seeking. But ultimately, Kreoss Old Warjack committed to the Soul Midnight Artificers to the project. He saw the fulfillment of Feora's request to protect the temple as a sacrosanct duty of his station. Crafted by experienced artificers, according to Feora's exacting specifications, the Hand of Judgement exemplifies her disdain for the enemies of the temple. The road to development of the Hand of Judgement was arduous. Numerous cortexes for this warjack were offered and found wanting. Feora craved a warjack with the passion and skill for battle rivaling her own. Fearing failure, the senior artificers on the project spent weeks in pious contemplation, finding himself among the racked penitents for days at a time and listening to their cries in hopes of gleaning some holy guidance. It was only after a lengthy period of fasting and self-privation that he saw how to improve his design, and at last crafted a cortex capable of channeling the fury Feora demanded. The sacred magic that radiates from the machine chassis stokes even the smallest flames into a roaring fire, turning the steam of its flamethrowers into a firestorm. During its short terms of service, Hand of Judgement has demonstrated the dangerous temper only Feora can keep in check. Under her control, the wrathful temperament is brought to heel and replaced with a more calculated aggression. Wherever the Warcaster treads, Hand of Judgement follows, eager to slip its leash and destroy those who displease its master. And yes, Feora having a warjack that she has to keep under chain, I feel like should say more about Feora than her warjack. Just because Feora is one of those people that she has a temper and the eye of higher callings for herself, and I feel like if she doesn't get those, well, we've seen where Feora goes if she is, well, laid low in a way. But every major warcaster does need their own personal warjack that helps exemplify their best or worst traits depending on how you look at Feora's. But let's go over its Mark III to Mark IV changes and see how dangerous this guy actually is with a flamethrower and a giant mace. And as always, we will start with its stat line. It is a speed 5. Its mat was a mat 7. It has gone up to a mat 8. Its rat was a rat 5. It's gone up to a rat 6, so it has gotten a little bit better. Defense 10, armor 19. This is a heavy warjack, so it gets all the fun heavy warjack abilities, such as trample, slam, and headbutt. He also has dual attack, and he has immunity to fire, which makes sense if he's going to be around Feora. So that is always fun. Check out his abilities right here. He has a thing called Blazing Wrath. This model can charge enemy models suffering from fire continuous effect without spending focus. Well, that makes sense if you're going to have it with Feora, who is a definite fire starter. So she lights people up, he charges in, not spending a focus, and then you can use all that real focus for whatever you need to do. But that's not even the bond. The bond with Feora, and all the bond that goes with it, Hand of Judgement. While Hand of Judgement is bonded with Feora and in her control range, it gains boosted ranged attack rolls. Pretty basic, pretty easy, the exact same as it was before. And having I imagine a flamethrower, where you get boosted range attack rolls, you can throw fire onto everybody as easily as you want. Because, well, with a rat 6, you're most likely going to hit most things with a boosted roll. So that's just free boost. So you want him to get in there and flame people up. His next thing he has is Fuel for the Flames, 5 inches. When a model without resistance to fire suffers a fire damage roll, while within 5 of this model, you add +2 to that roll, making fire burn hotter, which is a terrifying prospect with hanging out with Feora or any of her fire starters from the Temple of the Flame, because, well, it just makes their stuff go up. And if fire does a base 12 damage, now it does a base 14, which is probably going to kill off even heavily armored troops. So that is something that is even more terrifying. One of the abilities that we lost is Building Assault. This model can make one basic range attack before it makes its normal movement. A model that has made its Building Assault attack this activation can only make melee attacks during its combat activation. I see why that was removed, because now he just does dual attacks, so you don't have to worry about all that. It almost sounds like Bushwhack in a way, but I don't know. Now that we have Flamethrower that most likely can shoot into melee, having dual attack just kind of makes up for that, so I can see why that removed that. Let's go over his weapons. He has an Emulator Cannon, or Immolator Cannon. I don't quite know how to pronounce that. He can shoot with this in melee. It's fire, and it sets up the fire continuous effect on whoever he shoots with it. It is a Rat 6 with, of course, all the boosts that come with that. It is a range 10, which can be expanded if you have anything that can extend ranges on weapons now, because the new spray rules in Mark IV allows you to extend the range of sprays as well. A rate of fire 1 and POW 13. And if said model is within 5 inches of him, thanks to Fuel the Flames, it now does a POW of 15 to all the models within 5 inches of him. So that is, he is definitely a fire starter kind of guy. So weapon even more dangerous, all boosted, everything like that. Dang. And in comparison to that OP flamethrower that he has, let's go over his melee weapon, because he does have dual attacks. That means he does have a melee weapon. He has Flame of Truth. His mace is a Mat 8, range 2, POW 18, making him definitely a fantastic melee guy as well as a fantastic range guy. So yeah, basically he's going to hit pretty much whatever he tries to hit, unless it's like, an elf or something with like, defense 15. It has a Mat 8, range 2, POW 18, critical fire effect, so he has to actually get a critical roll on the fire effect for this mace. And then, to make that worse, his mace has the ability of Flame Burst. When this model boxes an enemy model with this weapon, enemy models within 1 inch of the box model suffer fire continuous effect. So not only does he kill whoever he's hitting with that POW 18, which most likely is going to kill a trooper, he lights up everybody else on fire. And that could be even before he shoots out his flamethrower. So, yeah, this guy, lights everybody up on fire. That's his job. Actually, it makes sense that he's with Feora, because yeah, this guy is basically just kindling with a lighter in hand. Oof, yeah. So if you like flames and you want to use as many things with flames and light up everybody around him, up to 10 inches plus, like, this is your Warjack. And I don't see any reason why Feora wouldn't have this guy in every army she's in, just because she likes flames. A lot of her abilities can even amp up flames another notch as well. And even compared to him, he notches up his own flames, and everybody else is around him or everybody else who's already on fire within 5 inches of him. So yeah, terrifying, but very on brand for the Protectorate of Menoth. But let's move on. Scourge of Heresy. Arcane invocations are dangerous and profane when performed without the Creator's strict guidance. Most mortals are too weak to utilize the blasphemous gifts of magic without falling to corruption. The Truth High Executioner Reznik knows all too well. Scourge of Heresy aids him in his divinely inspired vigilance. The hulking Warjack relishes purging the world of the occult shadows with an intensity rivaling that of the High Executioner himself. Its heart fire blazes with the terrible enthusiasm as it mortifies the flesh of the unclean with the flame of its holy blade Punisher. As Reznik is a weapon guided by that will of the Hierarch and ultimately Menoth, so too is the instrument of judgment sent against the creator of man's enemies. It is a vessel through which the wrath of ages embodies his hatred and sates his hunger to punish the faithless. Reznik chose this chassis, cortex, and weapons of his instrument with care, and had priests in service of the Solminite artificers bless every component, even beyond the normal rites used to sanctify Mechanica. Sacred passages written on the walls of the ancient Iktir were intoned over the machine as its heart fire was ignited for the first time. When Reznik bonded his will to the Warjack, he could feel the sanctity of those words resonating within the cortex of the Scourge of Heresy, as well as its unquenchable loathing for the perfidy of heretics. It was taught to express a very narrow range of acceptance for those it would consider allies. rather than enemies. Scourge of Heresy has proven its hatred of profane spellcasters in battle. Their spells wither in its presence, allowing the Jack to crush them with a blow from the blazing flail that flares with burning Minutes fury, or it strikes with the white-hot blade of the Punisher. With this consecrated weapon, Scourge of Heresy scours Cain of heretical spellcasters. Like its master, it cannot relent in its hunt of their kind. To stand before the Scourge of Heresy is to be judged, and if found wanting, condemned. So this guy is definitely a spellcasting hating warjack, which actually makes sense since Reznik is a very anti spellcasters outside of Menoth's very narrow view of what a spellcaster can do. So I can understand that and make this guy even more dangerous. So yeah, and Reznik, I expect this guy to be a fantastic melee because Reznik is super good in melee as well, as we discussed when we read over him. But let's see his Mark 3 to Mark 4 changes and see how much more dangerous this guy is in a very real sense on the battlefield. And as always, we are going to start with his stat line. He is a speed 4, a mat 7, defense 10, armor 19. Pretty basic for a large warjack as well. His abilities include Arcane Vortex. So this model can immediately negate any spell that targets it or a model within 3 inches of it by spending 1 focus or fury point. Negate spell does not take effect, but its cost remains. So this is not just a this guy is not just somebody who has the you can't target me with spells. You can target him with spells. You can just turn him off if you keep focus on him, and he can block his friends around him from any kind of spellcaster. So you can cast them, you just knock him off. So you always want to keep a focus on him if he isn't part of your army. His bond with Reznik and all the normal bond things. Once per turn, when Reznik destroys an enemy model or causes it to be removed from play as a result of a melee attack while in Scourge Heresy is bonded to him in his control range, immediately after the attacker is resolved, he can make a full advance. And he can do that once. And a full advance on 4 inches doesn't seem much, but he's moving out of activation, so that basically kicks him up to a movement of 8, so he can get him way closer to the enemy if he needs to move into a more interesting spot. And it's an out of activation move, so even if he does move out of a melee range, it's not going to affect his normal activation. So he can move out of melee ranges and then be able to activate as per normal whenever he does activate. So yeah, if you have Reznik going first, kill some people, have this guy move up 4 inches out of somebody else's stuff. He's really hard to shut down, and he wants to move around. So yeah, pretty straightforward on that one. And then we move over to his actual weapons. He has his Punisher, his sword that is on fire. It is a mat 7, range 2, POW 18, so it's going to kill pretty much any normal guy he hits. The only thing probably not going to kill outright would be like either a Warcaster or a Warjack or a Warbeast. Or of course a Warlock as well. And it causes continuous fire, so whatever he's hitting that survives, it sets up on fire. Then he has Perjuration. Or Perjuration? Whatever that is. So it gains an additional die on attack and damage rolls with this weapon against models with an enemy upkeep spell or animi on it. So this guy is literally hunting people with spells on them because he gets an additional die of damage that he can also boost. So if this guy is hitting a particularly hard target who has a armor spell on him, he can not only get 3 dice on attacks and damage rolls, but he can also boost his dice to get him up to a 4 on a POW 18. Yeah, that sounds just as terrifying as you think it is. So almost like gives him a weapon master against people with spells on them. Yeah, I can see why Reznik enjoys him so much. Then his other melee weapon, he has Blazing Star. Blazing Star is a mat 7, range 2, POW 16 chain weapon, so it ignores shields as per normal chain weapons. So he can get around all sorts of people in little armor walls, so just blow them back. Then he has Thresher on this weapon as well as a special attack. So when this model makes 1 melee attack with this weapon against each model in its line of sight with this weapon's melee range. And since the range is 2, he is going to turn into a very deadly 2-inch top. Well, technically 4 inches if you're going 4 inches plus his base size. So makes him super dangerous to everybody around him because there is no longer a back arc on this. So his arc is 360. So he makes one range attack against each of them, whether the model is friendly or enemy. So when he does this little top, make sure he is way far away from you, which should be pretty easy, being with his bond with Reznik, allowing him to move out of melee range. So if he's around your units, you will definitely want him to get away from your units before he does this little top attack. So yeah, but very, very dangerous dude. Very deceptively quick with Reznik as his guy, which also makes sense, especially with Reznik's second variation where he is on his chariot. Keeps his Warjack catching up with him, so that's where you want him to be. But yeah, he hunts down spellcasters, real good at it, and he's real good at clearing a lot of guys very quickly. He doesn't have quite the same amount of mat as some other Warjacks do, but definitely I feel like he makes up for it in his punishing the heretics who likes to use spellcasting. So, but that looks like everything we have today. That completes all of our character Warjacks for the Protectorate of Menoth. Next week we're going to finish off with their Colossals, the 2 of them I believe they have. But if you guys are enjoying this and you guys are still around, thank you guys so much. And if you could, please like, subscribe, comment, share this with your friends and fellow gamers alike. That does help the channel grow, keeps the Steam train rolling. Also, thank you again for Steamforged Games for letting me continue to read this fantastic lore. And without further ado, class dismissed.